Good evening, TradeFlare family. Welcome back to the nightly breakdown, where we break down what happened today in the stock market as well as give you an idea of what we're looking at into tomorrow. So before we head over and conduct a technical analysis of the SPY and 5 stocks, let's look at some key points to get a broad view of where we stand. So the first key point I want to start with is the quad witching that we have tomorrow. That means index futures, index options, stock options, and single stock futures will all expire tomorrow. So what does this mean? This usually brings some sort of volume, but it doesn't mean volatility. Now if we do see a big move one way, that could cause a gamma squeeze with the all these options expiring today. So we definitely want to be aware of our levels and where we stand. Expect all these daily contracts to be extra jumpy, so there's opportunities there as well. So let's head over to the next key point, and I want to talk about how growth is back and trending. I think this has to do with the idea that the general consensus is that rates will not be raised until 2023. And people are actually listening to what the Fed is saying. Banks are listening to what the Fed is saying. And in my opinion today, the banks were overreacting today by selling off. But at the same time, we haven't really seen a true pullback from the bank sector or any consolidation for the past 3 or 4 months. But now these growth companies can breathe the idea that they can plan out when the rates will be raised, or at least have an idea that there's still some time before that will happen. That's kind of giving these growth stocks that have sold off all the way back down to the bottom, and it's giving them some gas, it's giving them some momentum. For example, the genetics sector, the EV sector, and all the cybersecurity companies are all hot now, and there's all these futuristic minded 21st century based industries that are kind of getting some steam right now. And you'll see that I've highlighted that in my watch list tonight. Now to our last key point, as always, is our sectors. And you can really see how growth is leading the way. There's a split in the sectors. We have tech leading the way, healthcare right behind, utilities right behind that, and consumer discretionary and consumer staples right there in the middle. Notice how all of those closed positive, and notice how healthcare and utilities are the value sectors that are going. Compare that to the downside. You have energy, financials, building materials, industrials, all value industries, all value sectors. Building materials, financials, and energy all sold off pretty heavy today, so I want to see if that continues. And if it is a overreaction, we could see a nice jump on the SPY next week, so watch out for that. Now that we have a broader idea of what to expect, let's dive into the charts, starting off with an analysis of the SPY ETF, which tracks this S&P 500 index. So looking at the SPY on the daily chart, looking at candle structure first, we have another hammer candle here. And this hammer candle is accompanied by some good volume. And if you look where it's at, it's right at a support trend line. It pierced through that 20-day SMA, but it closed above it. As far as trend, location, volume, and candle structure, this looks like we could head higher into tomorrow. If we do see a surprising gap down, I'm watching that 418 level as a support. If we do break all-time highs, we have already doubled the range. So we're looking at blue skies territories, looking at to target whole and half dollar marks. On the downside, we're looking at that 418, that 416.50 to fill all the way down to 410.50. So keep that in mind as we head into tomorrow and the weekend. So now that we have an idea of where our broader market sits, let's dive into the watch list, starting off with Square, ticker symbol SQ. And looking at trend, we're in a recent uptrend. Looking at candle structure, we have a green continuation candle within a channel. Looking at location, it's punctured right through that 50-day simple moving average on the daily chart. Looking at the bigger pattern, we have 3 uneven lows off of a support line. Looking at our TTM squeeze indicator, this is kind of confirming the uptrend that we have. Now my first target is going to be the top of that range at 243. Now if we see a full-on breakout, my first target would be at 278. Notice how every time we've seen those long continuation candles off of the support, we've seen a huge continuation follow-up. So watch Square going into tomorrow. Next up on the watch list, I've got MBUU, Malibu Boats. And this is a growth stock in an overall uptrend. We've seen a nice pullback to our 200-day SMA, which is right around our 50% retracement mark of this previous move. And looking at candle structure, this is a hammer candle with some general confluence between these support lines. I think we could see a super support and a bounce tomorrow. And looking at volume, we definitely have enough volume to support that theory, so watch out for Malibu Boats. So the third stock on the watch list tonight, we've got CRISPR Therapeutics, and recently we came from a downtrend and we printed a reversal pattern known as a reverse head and shoulders, and currently we're in a short-term uptrend. Looking at candle structure here, this is a green continuation candle right after a hammer retracement candle, which gives me the idea that we are in fact in an uptrend. And looking at location, we've just recently broken through our 50-day SMA, and we did it on good volume. And to give myself a little bit more conviction, I'm looking at the money flow indicator, and it looks like we're holding above that zero line, which is bullish in my opinion. I think we could head up and test the neckline of that reverse head and shoulders at 137.59. Now ultimately on the break of this reverse head and shoulders pattern, I would expect to run all the way up to $180 if we get the volume that we want. So keeping CRISPR Therapeutics on my watch list. Batting cleanup on my watch list is the Invesco Solar ETF, ticker symbol TAN. This is what I'm talking about with those growth companies starting to bounce back from the bottom. As we know, the solar energy, the clean energy industry is a growth industry. And notice how similar these growth charts are looking, or at least the similar industries that have been beaten down. Looking at trend, we are in a recent uptrend from a reversal. And notice how we've broken through and held above all of these resistance trend lines and the 50-day moving average. As far as candle structure goes, we have a long-bodied green continuation candle, which is accompanied by a lot of volume. To give some extra conviction, the money flow is shooting straight up and is starting to hold above the zero line. Notice location, this is right off of the 50-day moving average. We saw some steam from the solar energy stocks today, so watch these and watch the TAN ETF. Next up is ASLRX Pharmaceuticals. This is a growth company that I've done a little bit of research on because they've got an interesting drug that they are about to release. And as far as this thing stands, it looks a lot like the other growth companies. Looking at trend, we just came out of a downtrend, breaking through all of our resistance trend lines. As far as candle structure today, we had an inverted hammer, but it closed as a continuation candle off of this hammer, off of this 50-day moving average. And if you zoom in, there is more than average volume. So at this point, I think we could start to move. Looking at resistance at that 20-day SMA, just sitting there flat at $1.60. This is an aggressive shares trade, playing the hype on biotechs, playing the hype on growth stocks. Looking at the all-time here, this thing is at complete lows. And notice how every time this thing popped above that 50-day SMA, it ran and ran. This could be a really nice trade. It's a speculative trade. It's based off of technicals, and I kind of like it, so watch out for ACRX. And that wraps up tonight's nightly breakdown. If you enjoyed this video, if you gained value, or if you learned something, make sure you hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you can get notified when we post any live or educational content. If you're looking to join our team and be surrounded and motivated by our online community of traders and investors, as well as gain access to trade signals that let you know whenever we make a trade, check out the link in the description below to join our Discord. To gain full access, upgrade to TradeFlare Pro for $24.99 a month and get half off your first month using the discount code TFPRO2021. And don't be mistaken, we are not financial advisors and none of this is a recommendation. The stock market is risky and you could lose money, so use the information inside these videos at your sole discretion. As always, you cannot forget that time is your most valuable asset, so quit wasting it. Get up, get out, and go get it, my friend.